there's the ongoing cost of successful AI, and then there's the ongoing cost of unsuccessful AI, and that you keep throwing money into the pit, or you give up, right? Why is envisioning such a critical step before implementing AI? That's not just applicable to our practice, right? Because there's a lot of other consultants out there that are trying to position envisioning the same way. Envisioning can be synonymous with whatever. Some people use envisioning and discovery as the same word.
Sure.
We feel that they are two different words, right? Two different things. But why such a critical step before implementing AI?
You need to understand the role that technology is going to play in your organization. And the biggest thing is that a lot of people just don't know how. And it creates an avenue of self-reflection that a lot of companies haven't really had an opportunity to do. And AI is kind of pressuring that need and that opportunity to do that self-reflection on, this is how I run and work as a business. This is how my people do business every day. And when we introduce AI to that, what does that mean? And how does that change the everything that we do? And they don't know what that is. And so that's why it's important to have that envisioning process to kind of outline and understand what that actually means.
Yeah. One of the things I like hearing you talk about when you're at least speaking to some of our clients is pretend that we're hiring a junior person. Can you walk me through that? What you mean by that, and what message are you trying to drive home when you say, when it comes to implementing a solution like this, pretend you're hiring a junior person?
Yeah. So when you have something like a structured process, it only works that way, the same way every single time, and with the same inputs and outputs. AI doesn't really function that way. It functions more of how a person interprets a role and position. So the way I like to do things is to, what AI comes into play is you're going to either augment or enhance or potentially replace a behavior that a person does every day. And so thinking in terms of, if I were to hire like a junior person into that role, what kinds of things would I do? I would coach them. I would walk them through on our goals and processes of the role. These are the tasks that is expected of you. And I need to review those tasks to make sure you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And I need a way to be able to do that. And it's the same way of thinking with that when coming to an AI approach for a behavior replacement.
Yeah. Why is it so important to ideate use cases? And to take the question even further, why is it important to ideate use cases with business leaders in the organization?
Yeah, so business leaders understand what the business outcomes need to be, but also they have some knowledge and degree on how the job is supposed to be done in order to reach those objectives. And what's even better is if you can get the people, the frontline people that are doing that entry level or deep dive work in order to reach those objectives with it, because that allows you to have some understanding that you never had before with it. And that is gold, because a lot of times organizations don't know that, when it comes to having a deep understanding of what needs to happen and especially around the things that are around it. That's where a lot of people don't know and don't understand. And that insight is a lot of times where the gaps are, and where something like AI or other kinds of automation may be able to be helpful.
Yeah. I'll ask it almost a different way, which when we hear the question, or at least when we discuss how do you uncover pain points that AI can solve, AI use cases can, it's a different way of asking that question. Would you agree? Or are there some use cases where it's not necessarily a pain point?
It's not a pain point until they realize it's actually a pain point. because sometimes you don't know that technology is actually possible. And so you work the way you've been working and work with the stuff, and that might be working fine for you. But then what if you could do something else? What if you could go beyond that? Because some companies never have asked themselves those questions around certain ways to approach things. So now with AI, can say, what if it could do this? And it's the same way with any kind of new capability, around it. And so that's part of the reason having the conversations with clients and their ideas and how their business process works. Like, have you thought, what would it mean if you had this information? And they may not realize, is that information even possible to figure out or discuss? And it's like, when AI comes into play, it absolutely can be. It's just, we have to think about the best way it's going to work for you.
Yeah. I think about pain points as it's too micro on a process. You know what I mean? Especially when we're talking about user experience. Like they're addressing a certain part of a process that is affecting them the most. They're looking at that part of the process subjectively, but they're not panning out and seeing that pain point is actually a result of something that is starting several steps back.
Yeah.
So is that at least one of the reasons why discovery is so important, right? Talk about the value of a discovery. For me, like the magic in getting a business to realize how important discovery is, rather than just start development work right away, is answering the question of discovery might cost X dollars and X amount of time, and then you get into developing a successful solution. Versus just developing the successful solution and having it cost you X in this much time plus some in the long run, right? So how do you translate that? How do you formulate that into like an executive conversation where you're trying to get them to see the value of more upfront investment before they even start development work?
Yeah, I mean, you have to understand where that improvement is going to provide value to the organization. You can always build something and that kind of stuff, and it may provide a degree of value, but is it sustainable value? Does it work well, and does it integrate with how your business works with it? And ultimately, that's why it's so important to do that, because to a certain degree, you want some sustainability, and is it going to be 100% everything you absolutely want it to be? No, it's not always going to be. But the idea is that if I can get a certain degree of expectation of sustainable outcomes with a product, let's shoot for that. And when we discover, we also talk about what is realistic and what is not realistic, especially given their timeframes and goals and with it. And why don't we build something that's actually going to be sustainable and work well? And then anything else beyond that, where things that are, nice to haves or future opportunities, we can always bake in the future, but at least you're walking away with something that is going to always work for you. And a lot of these AI use cases, they just go and build something and it falls apart because there's not proper change management. There's not proper understanding and value assessment or anything like that. They just go make something happen because that's what was asked for them. And in some degrees, that may work, to a certain degree, but a lot of times, is it sustainable? Probably not.
Yeah, and here's another way to talk about it. How do you prepare clients for the ongoing cost of AI? And that's like a double-sided question, because there's the ongoing cost of successful AI, and then there's the ongoing cost of unsuccessful AI, and that you keep throwing money into the pit, or you give up, right? What's the difference there? And either way, how do you prepare a client for the ongoing cost of AI?
Yeah, so that's part of why we do discoveries, is so that we can blueprint on what we think it's going to cost and compare that to from an ROI standpoint. Because you can build all kinds of great stuff out of AI. Does it make any fiscal sense though? Probably not, because it may be even cheaper just to keep doing the same behavior the way you were doing it before. So we want to be able to compare that to like real world actual costs or ROI savings and opportunities with it. And versus when you just build something, you may have a really quick turnaround, but then you're constantly it doesn't work the way you need it to work. And there wasn't proper analysis on ROI. And probably the biggest risk, the number one risk, in my opinion, why all these AI projects fail is because they don't sit side by side with the business. The business is like, this doesn't work the way I need it to work. This is not how I do my job every day. And I'm not going to change the way I do my job every day. So let's make something that can negotiate with how they do their job every day based on how the system needs to work, so that there's harmony between both.
Walk us through what a successful AI envisioning experience should look like for a business.
The more you can understand, bring the business in and listen to how they do their jobs every day, and to be able to kind of document and understand their jobs every day really helps create insight on where opportunities that AI can really help with that. And especially as a company that's looking for, like, I'm looking to save a lot of money utilizing AI, you need to look at volume. And so, an easy point of entry is, your frontline people that are doing these tasks every day. How can I make their jobs easier? How can I make their jobs better? Because if I can improve those experiences, then I'm going to get that ROI expectation around time, because a lot of these individuals have a number of tasks they have to do, and a lot of those tasks are very tedious. If I can give them time back, then I can have them working on things that are more important than some of the stuff that they're constantly having to do in a repetitive way.
Mm-hmm. Does it make sense to change? I think there's a mindset right now that the job loss is the result of automation. Mm-hmm. I like to argue that job retention is the result of good automation, mm-hmm. right? Can you speak to that and why that would make more sense to put it that way? I've got a few thoughts, but
yeah. So I think that it's all a matter of change, and this concept of AI is just going to completely replace people. It will, in the long run, it will eventually, but by the time it actually does that, the jobs have already changed culturally as with it. So people's positions, job descriptions shift, positions shift, and that kind of stuff, as with any technology with it. And ultimately, people aren't really being replaced with AI with it. Their behavior is being improved with AI, and that's ultimately, if it's done correctly, can really help there. But ultimately, people aren't being replaced by AI, and that's unpractical in that regard. And so I would not see it. There may be other goals in regards to using that as a narrative, but that's not the real narrative that's out there.
Yeah. How do you keep automations maintained over time?
So you want to design a solution where you regularly revisit how well it's working and how well it's operating for your organization and business process with it. So you definitely want to check in. And I think that's part of it is that people don't know what some of these automations, some of them are more formalized, and some of them are not more formalized, but having a review process around how those automations work, because the reality is business processes change all the time. And it's important to understand the shelf life of a solution. Some may be only 6 months. A lot of times it's not. Like, a lot of times it's years, and just people don't really know about that. But the biggest thing is what an organization can do is if they can inventory their automations and solutions, even ones that are created by the business, you'll have an understanding of what something exists and why it exists, and an opportunity to go and check in and revisit it. Is this still working for us? Is this still needed any longer? Do we have multiple aspects of this automation where we can consider maybe future state consolidation around it and that type of thing? So ultimately, looking at ways to be able to understand both from a internal development standpoint, but even from a business development standpoint, because a lot of the business creates their own automations on their own as well. And so having that visibility is really important.
I think for me, the other two variables to this are how successful was the consultant or the business at implementing
Mhm.
the automation, and then what was adoption like? I think adoption is the fastest way to kill anything,
Right.
right? If the change management or the adoption is not successful, I don't care how good the process, the automation or whatever it is that's been implemented works, right? It's not going to stay very long with the business. But I also think when we talk about maintaining automations, here's what I'm hearing at least is a consultant will come in and whip something up fast, right? Now, when we say maintaining an automation, does that mean we're calling the consultant once a week because something isn't working or because something needs to be remediated because really the implementation wasn't as successful as it could have been? Or are we talking about what should be expected of maintaining an automation, which is minor enhancements, occasional bug fixes that actually occur that might be a result of a manufacturer change, like, within Power Platform or something like that? Those are to be expected, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think businesses need to be mindful of the difference between the two. Like most businesses today are so used to, we got to hire a consultant, and they associate hiring a consultant with pain. You know what I mean? It's painful to do that because you're bringing in somebody and they're probably going to do 50% of what you hoped they would do. And you'll call that probably a successful project versus somebody that can get into the 80 or 90% percentile if they actually do all of the front end work the right way.
Right. Yeah. And I think that the idea of, from a consultant standpoint, is if you keep it in mind as a part of your design, is that you're not going to maintain the solution over the long term. You need to design it in such a way where someone who is potentially even non-technical when it comes to some of this stuff needs to be able to understand and maintain the solution with it. So how do you design a solution so that they can understand when issues, problems, how to remediate, do proper knowledge transfer and education around it? Because the way I see it is, a good consultant is, I built a decent product that works for what was expected at that time and what is potential future state around that time. The client understands really what it's supposed to do and what it's not supposed to do with it. And then, but there's always additional opportunities to innovate and expand. And so what we want is to be able to have that relationship with the client to say, hey, we really liked what we did here. It's really working for us. We want to be able to do more. Can we engage and do more with it and expand around that? And that's really kind of the relationship I see consultants should have, rather than just doing something that's, only partially works, and they really have no knowledge into what that actually does.
Yeah. Is Microsoft Fabric picking up steam? Is it gaining momentum? And why is unified data becoming so important?
So it's definitely picking up speed. It's matured a lot. To a point where I think it's ultimately very much ready for many organizations. And in all honesty, it creates an avenue to simplify this data management challenge that a lot of companies have. I have data everywhere. Can I get it into one spot? Can I get all my end user productivity data, like Excel files and stuff, into one spot and work out of a central system for that? That provides an outlet for that. And now, one of the biggest things, I don't understand where our data is and what our data is. Well, by getting it all in one spot, it creates some understanding. Now you can build plans around it, how I want that data to be put together and how it needs to be put together. And especially being able to control cost. Now I have one singular cost around how my data is put into this spot, how it's transformed, and how it's going to be presented so I can use it and consume it. I don't have to manage multiple separate costs around it. I think that's very appetizing for a lot of companies because it simplifies that process.
Yeah, for sure. You call them legacy low-code 1.0 tools. I don't know if that's a universal term or if that's something you made up.
It's just something
That's good. Yeah, I like it. Excel access, SharePoint lists. They matter a lot to enterprises today. I'm going to guess because there's so much of it, right? I think the footprint is so massive. It's been so heavily adopted, not because they intended it to be that way, but because it just became like the path of least resistance for so many processes, right, within a business. And that's probably why it exists as much as it does today. What's the solution? Does there need to be a solution? But
so the reality is that because of the accessibility of these tools in collaboration types of technologies and other affiliated technologies, they're always going to exist no matter what. There's nothing you can really do about it because ultimately what business users are looking for is a CRM light type of solution to manage and track their unique business process with it. And the spreadsheet, the SharePoint list, similar types of technologies, are there. It's quickly accessible. I can throw something together, and it's technology that I have a degree of familiarity with. And I don't need IT. I don't need a developer. I can just make things happen. So that's always going to exist. The one thing is there's limiting factors in regards to those the technologies with it. And people want process. They want to do their organizational process around these different types of data. So ultimately, they're looking for that. And I think that with some of the tools and technologies like Power Platform and having a company usher these people into those areas creates an understanding of something that they may not have had before with these legacy low-code 1.0 solutions. And it'll help them plan appropriately for longevity, especially from a centralized IT standpoint. So, so you need to be concerned around security and basically what they're ultimately doing with some of this information, but it's inevitable. So how can we as IT better understand and ushering them into a more safer technology and platform around those behaviors? I would not consider low code as a threat. In regards to, I would consider it an opportunity to understand, because you can always put security controls around it. And the way I see it is if you can get people into a platform that has better base level security, you can slowly close those security gaps over time while still allowing that business flexibility.
What are some of the examples of the baseline security that you're talking about there?
Yeah. So one of the biggest things I would just say from a security standpoint is, as I said, information, like understanding the purpose around it. A lot of organizations don't know why those solutions exist. To me, that's a major security gap. Why the business did something, they put something in there, and what kind of information is being used in that. So just that information on a volume standpoint, it greatly helps a company's security posture around that. And additionally, if I can move things into something like Dataverse, its natural state as a relational database has some natural security from a volume default applicability to it, as well as it makes it additionally difficult to leave as a solution. Or like if you have an Excel file that's full of data, that's a packaged solution in that regard. That can easily be copied out and put somewhere else. Mm-hmm. If I have something in a more structured, tables and that kind of stuff, that's a little bit more difficult. Could I export that? Sure, with it, but I would have to export all kinds of data in order to be able to kind of reveal what that solution actually did and all the data corresponding to it, versus when I have everything singularly in Excel file. So getting it slightly spread out in a solution like that with the proper tables with it, and then if you were to provide some education to the end user around some of these spaces, generally the user would like to do the right thing. They're just looking for something they can just do what they need to do. And so you also have guardrails that you can do from a platform standpoint to help, like, hey, you shouldn't be able to do these types of behaviors when you're trying to create a solution. So you have these kind of DLP controls. We're going to allow you to do this, but you can't do this. And if you want to do this and you need to talk to somebody about it and that type of thing, where I can basically do whatever I want, in Excel as much as I want, because I'm just exporting a bunch of data, putting it in and doing whatever I want in there. So, ultimately that's kind of, those are some initial examples of why it's better to get them into a low-code platform.
Gotcha. A few times you talked about having the correct taxonomy for something like Microsoft Purview. It's hard, right? It's challenging, right? And then when it comes to setting it up with other solutions like Varonis or some of the other, services out there that are non-Microsoft that provide some automation features to something like Microsoft Purview, the magic doesn't happen quite as expected, right? I mean, it doesn't align with what was sold to them, right? And I'm assuming this taxonomy has something to do with that. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of that?
Yeah, so there's always an opportunity for a basic taxonomy. If you want to think from a simplistic standpoint, there's sensitive data and non-sensitive data with it. What do I do with sensitive data? What do I not do with sensitive data? Where should it live and where should it not live? And a lot of times when you don't have a taxonomy figured out, that's really kind of what you're looking at with it. The challenge with that is that doesn't work for a lot of organizations. There's a lot of different aspects around it. There's different, I would say, record types or behavior types, and there's certain expectations around some of those things. And I need to be able to understand them. And I need to be able to properly secure them and only give proper authorization to the things that are like that. So when it comes to its taxonomy, is to a certain degree is understanding what our data is and where it is with it, and then do we have the proper controls in place based on what is expected of me. Now, when you don't have a proper taxonomy in place, like with it, it prevents you. It causes challenges around business flexibility. And so if I were to say, hey, I want this sensitive data here and the sensitive data not here, well, that could potentially break a business process. There may be business reasons why data needs to live here. IT doesn't necessarily know and understand why data is here and not here around it. So the importance of expanding on that taxonomy is understanding same kind of thing what we're talking about. Why does the business do business? Who do we do business with? Why do we do business with them? How do we collaborate with those people? Building a taxonomy around that is going to make it that much more effective in being able to organize how your information needs to be organized, and especially on the information that needs to be encrypted. And I'm not just talking about volume encryption. I'm talking about record level encryption or file level encryption, because some things need to stay encrypted even no matter where it goes with it. And if you don't factor that in or consider that, you can break a lot of business process. So designing a proper taxonomy that works for how your business works is critically important to drive the success of some of those automation tools that are out there to be able to help push that automation in place.
Really good, dude.
Let me ask you a question. So what does Octem mean to MicroAge? And how does that reflect? How do we want that to reflect to our clients?
Yeah. There's a few different reasons for the word Octem. What I like about the word Octem comes from the Latin word octa, right? And octa meaning 8. There are 8 principles that should be followed when it comes to implementing AI in a business or understanding what AI can mean to a business. And there is no step 1 for it. It is entirely dependent on the maturity of the business. But we try to address at least all 8 of these principles in our discussions with clients. Primarily to make sure that they're successful, but 2, to make sure that they're not so hyper-focused on the excitement of a solution, really, and more focused on the impact on the business, the successful adoption of whatever it is that's being implemented, those types of things. So there's that. I like the word Octem because we're moving into an era where users are not going to be necessarily Googling things anymore. They're going to be using self-service AI tools like Copilot or ChatGPT, and they're going to want to get fast information conversationally, like through that assistant. So if you look up something unique like MicroAge Octem and ask, what is it? You'll get a very detailed response, on what it means. It's not going to conflict with anything else out there that's called Octem, right? Because there's very few things out there that are called Octem. And that's really what I like about it, is that we're trying to support where we feel user experience is going as it relates to consumption of AI. We should probably talk about Copilot.
Yeah.
So I look at Copilot in 2024. It was introduced, right? And you've heard me say this, before. It was introduced, not well received. I think, in my opinion, right? I think the idea of it was great. It was a great start, but I commend businesses for being aware of the fact that there was so much risk around just buying Copilot licensing, right? And I think 2025 was the year that clients did some investigation and they tried to at least get an understanding of everything that was involved around a solution like Copilot. I think 2026 is going to be the year that we see massive adoption, right? I think businesses are going to start investing in it. They're going to do everything, or they have maybe done this year, or going to do everything they need to do in 2026 from a data risk standpoint around it. Do you agree with that, or do you have other thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's going to pick up. Definitely. I think if you look at Microsoft's strategy, they're really starting to push agents in general. So it's not just general productivity. It's pushing agents as much as possible as a part of this. And I think they're coming to the reality of what I was initially talking about when we were starting the AI practice is there's going to be a convergence of self-service AI and controlled AI. And the agents are a delivery mechanism for controlled AI. And they're going to eventually meet in the middle, with it. And I think especially towards the end of 2026, that's where it's really going to start hitting in the middle with it. And then there'll be more of a blur, between self-service and these agents. And because there'll be enough of them that created to kind of help with like mini tasks and mini capabilities. Because ultimately what a lot of people are asking for when it comes to AI, I don't just want knowledge. I want it to do something for me, take care of a task with it. And that's ultimately where a lot of these smaller agents are designed is, I'm going to take care of a task for you. You provide us the context, I will go take care of it. That's what people want, out of AI, because that's where they're going to get that value out of it is like, I'm not having to take care of this task anymore. I can just tell it and it'll understand and it'll take care of what I need it to take care of. Now, to a certain degree, they do that when it comes to research and knowledge gathering around that, but it's beyond that. I want someone to go and write the email and just send it. I want someone to generate a document and put it together exactly the way I want it without me even having to open the document, that type of thing. It's already ready to go, that type of thing. Those types of behaviors, that's where the convergence of that self-service and agents are going to come into play. So we should talk about off-the-shelf AI versus custom AI, remember, because we wanted to discuss that.
Well, I'll talk about it and then maybe you can talk about it.
Okay.
I'll do the best I can. So okay. I'll give you the elementary school version of how to answer that, and then you can go into the PhD version of it.
Okay.
But I base the difference on experience and conversations that we've had with clients. There is a ton of value in purchasing an off-the-shelf AI solution. That doesn't mean it's for everything. And because of all the hype and all of the marketing madness that is around AI right now, I think businesses are more hyper-focused on the off-the-shelf AI solution because it's being marketed very, very well, as opposed to a custom AI solution. The moment you hear a custom AI solution, you're just like, oh man, we got to do all this work. It sounds expensive. We got to do this. How about we just go buy this tool and it's going to, deliver some value. And in defense of the off-the-shelf AI solution, it will compress the time to deployment. It's an already made solution, right? From a support standpoint, you're getting support from whoever it was that made the off-the-shelf solution, the third-party solution, right? So there's not a lot of stuff you need to do internally from a development standpoint. You just kind of buy, and hopefully there's a lot of plug and play, built into this thing, and you're off and running, and train some users, to some level of proficiency, and you've got it. The problem that I see with it is that that is all that it does. And sometimes the off-the-shelf solution, well, not sometimes, I say in most cases, the off-the-shelf solution does not always align with the personality of the business. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I call it the 80-20 rule, that an off-the-shelf solution will develop 80% of the experience that is required in order for a user to be successful with using the tool or to maximize the value of the ROI that the tool has promised. The other 20%, it can't figure it out. mainly because it doesn't, the third-party solution or the manufacturer of that third-party solution didn't ask the questions to really understand the business well enough to get them the rest of the way home. And that's really where the value of a custom AI solution really, really shines. Yes, it is a bigger upfront investment. Yes, it does take longer to deploy the solution, right? Yes, it's going to require probably a different level of ongoing maintenance, but how valuable is that other 20% to your business? If you can actually deploy something that will 100%, or at least come as close to 100% with aligning with your business, your users, your objectives, how valuable is that? Mm-hmm. And if a business actually takes the time to think about that and to weigh both of them, I would argue that the custom AI solution is probably the better way to go, even though it's going to take bigger investment and more time.
Yeah. And the way I see it is that these products out there that you can buy off the shelf, they work really well based on how they were initially designed around it. And even some of these off the shelf allows you to add your degree of context, and what I mean, like your own documents, and pointing to knowledge sources around that. But how much value of just a simple knowledge agent is that really providing? Sure, it may be a hop. It may help, some particular business process, but is it really providing real change versus the illusion of change with it? That's where I kind of feel with some of these. And the reason I say that is because what you talk about, the personality, and I'll go back to the concept of, I hired a junior worker, with it. When you hire someone, there's things that your company does really well, and your business process does really well, and you want to cultivate that. So when you hire someone, you want them to work the way your company is essentially designed. So how do you make that happen when you buy something off the shelf? There's only so much context that it can do in regards to operating that. It's not going to ultimately work with how your business process ultimately needs to work, and to do that ongoing cultivation with it. So that's something that, if you want to have real change management and be able to insert something into that process, that custom solution is going to be more optimal with it. And while, especially around the technologies from a rapid solution development with things like Copilot Studio and that kind of stuff, and Power Platform, and using AI with it, it may take a little while up front, but you're going to save a ton of time when it comes to actual delivery of that custom solution, as well as that long-term, implementation and change management. You could buy an off-the-shelf product and you could spend months trying to convince the business and trying to get it to work for your business processes, and you may not ever be successful with that, versus spending some of the time, a little bit of extra time up front, doing the proper blueprint for how it should work for your organization, and then it'll just work, as close to that 100% with that. And that sustainability, if that's important to you as an organization, especially as a business unit, from the business standpoint, why not spend that little bit of time to make it work?
Yeah.